Tanjiro, with renewed determination, finally manages to move the boulder, to the astonishment of Zenitsu and Inosuke's chagrin. Despite his success, Tanjiro knows that any pause will cause his strength to diminish, and he must keep pushing the boulder for as long as he can. Remembering the advice given by his master, Tanjiro engages his legs and hips to provide additional force, digging his feet into the earth. Inspired by Tanjiro's success, Inosuke begins chanting tempura in a manic manner to motivate himself and makes his own attempt at the boulder training. Zenitsu watches this unfold, but he is still yet to make his own push. The little sparrow Chuntaro suddenly appears and chirps impatiently, attempting to get Zenitsu's attention. Initially, Zenitsu dismisses the little bird, assuming he is motivated to push the boulder. However, when Chuntaro resorts to pecking his foot repeatedly, he finally turns his attention to the bird. Meanwhile, Tanjiro continues to push the boulder, gritting his teeth and exerting all his energy. He struggles to keep his muscles moving, but eventually manages to shift the boulder one cho. With the boulder successfully moved, Tanjiro collapses to the ground, utterly spent and struggling to catch his breath. Despite his fatigue, he weakly calls for help, his face turning blue from dehydration. Suddenly, a large figure approaches and pours water over Tanjiro's head, quenching his thirst. Confused, Tanjiro looks up and sees the towering shape of Gyomei standing over him. Initially, Tanjiro assumes he has died and has been greeted by a Buddha-like figure, until he sits up and realizes he is still alive. Amazed and grateful, Tanjiro looks up at Gyomei, who commends him for moving the boulder and completing the intensive training. In addition, he praises Tanjiro for his actions in the village, acknowledging his courage and selflessness. Tanjiro, still taken aback by Gyomei's words, questions what he means by the village. In response, Gyomei clarifies that he is referring to the swordsmith village and how Tanjiro had prioritized saving the villagers' lives over rescuing his sister Nezuko. Tanjiro tries to interject, stating that Nezuko had been the one to make the decision. However, Gyomei continues by saying that it was not something to be ashamed of, and that Tanjiro should be proud of his actions. Tanjiro, still unconvinced, replies that his hesitation had almost caused the villagers' deaths, claiming that he does not deserve Gyomei's acknowledgement. This causes Gyomei to reflect on his past life, as he states that children are not only innocent and pure, but also weak, prone to lying, and capable of being cruel. Despite this, Gyomei does not see these characteristics in Tanjiro, recognizing his commitment to the right path despite his uncertainty about the future. Tanjiro reveals that he always finds someone to help him stay on track, and he had a particularly close call during the swordsmith village when he had to choose between saving Nezuko and facing Urami. Therefore, Tanjiro requests that Gyomei not acknowledge him too quickly, and thanks him for the water and for training him. In response, Gyomei affirms that he has dispelled Tanjiro's doubts and acknowledges him, causing Tanjiro to be puzzled and ask why he commends him. Gyomei shares that it is because he once lived in a temple, raising orphans. Years ago, he observed the children under his care preparing to eat. When one of the children mentioned the fish they had for food, Gyomei explained that he met a fish vendor who gave him unsold goods. Before the children could eat, the youngest child, a girl named Sayo, gave her fish to Gyomei, explaining that he was too thin and could have it instead. Gyomei laughed at her gesture but appreciated her concern, reassuring her that he has undergone special training to prevent hunger from bothering him. He joked that despite his appearance, he was still stronger than all of them, as one of the boys asked Sayo for her fish instead. She refused, insisting that it belonged to Gyomei, leading everyone to laugh. The stone hashira shared that, despite not being blood-related, everyone in the temple got along well. Everyone helped one another, and they lived like a family, a life that he was content with living forever. As they slept, a boy disobeyed the rules and stayed out beyond the temple's curfew. He encountered a demon, and in a desperate attempt to save himself, he offered Gyomei and the other children to the demon instead. He returned to the temple and destroyed the incense burners that protected the temple, allowing the demon to enter. The demon entered the room where the children slept, killing 4 of them, and alerting Gyomei with the sounds of their deaths. The remaining 4 children hid behind him as he failed to protect them, trying to flee only to be caught and killed by the demon. The stone Hashika remembers the other children's disbelief in his ability to protect them due to his physical appearance, personality, and blindness. Only Sayo stayed in the corner as he fought, And as the memories cause him to recall his rosary, Guillaume remembers his firm resolve to protect her at all costs. Roaring in anger, he grabbed the demon's wrist, suffering a wound from its claws, before ripping off its forearms. The stone hashira unleashed a powerful punch on the demon's head, then threw himself on top of it, repeatedly punching its head to restrain it. The floor shook with each blow while Sayo cried in fear. Guillaume continued to punch the demon until dawn, losing many things, getting injured, and risking his life to protect Sayo. However, when villagers came to the temple, Sayo proclaimed that Guillaume was the monster who killed all the children, having been too young to comprehend the traumatic event properly. Tanjiro listens on, and Guillaume reflects that no one could blame a child for such a statement, though he had always hoped for a gesture of gratitude in return. Despite his hope, Guillaume concluded that children can only think about themselves. When dawn arrived, the demon's corpse vanished in the sunlight, leaving only the children's remains behind, and Guillaume lost many things. The stone hashira had previously been imprisoned for murder and would have faced execution had it not been for the intervention of Kagaya. This experience left him deeply distrustful, making him naturally suspicious of Tanjiro. He believed that people's true characters revealed themselves in dire situations, and he had lost faith in their outward virtuousness. Tanjiro, however, stood out as a special child due to his unwavering purity and sincerity, a quality that few can maintain, regardless of the situation. As everyone grappled with uncertainty, Guillaume promised to help Tanjiro and ensure that he would never stray from his path. Touched by his sincere support, Tanjiro shed tears of gratitude and promised to do his best. Guillaume reassured him by patting his head, reminding them both of a moment he had shared with Sayo. During breakfast with Inosuke and Tanjiro, Genya remarked that despite what others may think, Guillaume was a kind person. He had been unable to become a Suguko due to a lack of talent. Tanjiro explained that he had wanted to talk to Genya during their walk about his brother, but the discussion was interrupted by their fight. Despite this, Tanjiro remained steadfast in his belief that Shinobu's harshness stemmed from her genuine care for Genya. As he went about his training, Tanjiro encountered Zenitsu sitting on his boulder, still not having moved. Concerned by his distant demeanor, Tanjiro offered to help, but Zenitsu rejected his offer and told him to focus on his own training. Tanjiro was worried, but ultimately respected his friend's decision and left him with some fish. As Tanjiro continued on his way to Gyu's, he couldn't help but worry about Zenitsu. Additionally, he was thinking about Nezuko, having been apart from her for some time. However, any concerns faded as he realized he had gotten lost and began looking at his map to find his way. Suddenly, he heard the sound of clashing wooden blades coming from a courtyard nearby. Curious, Tanjiro ran towards the source of the noise. As he arrived in the courtyard, Tanjiro was awestruck by the sight before him. Gyu and Sanemi were engaged in an intense sparring match, their movements fast and precise. Tanjiro watched in fascination as they blocked and sliced at each other, their clashing blades creating sparks with each impact. Tanjiro marveled at Sanemi's speed, amazed that he could actually see and comprehend their movements. He quickly counterattacked with wind breathing, 5th form, cold mountain wind, aiming a powerful blow at Gyu. Gyu blocked the attack with water breathing, 7th form, drop ripple thrust, causing their blades to clash in a violent burst of sparks. The force of the impact shattered both of their bokuto, leaving them without weapons. As the scene unfolded in the courtyard, Sanemi became increasingly irritated and decided to make the training more interesting. He decided to continue the fight without the use of wooden blades and challenged Gyu to a physical altercation, ignoring Tanjiro's presence. However, Tanjiro quickly jumped in and intervened, stopping Sanemi from attacking Gyu. Sanemi was annoyed by Tanjiro's interruption and questioned him on why he was there, assuming he was spying on them. Tanjiro, however, asked him if they were fighting over ohagi, a type of Japanese sweet. This only angered Sanemi further, and he demanded to know if Tanjiro was joking. In response, Tanjiro assured him that he wasn't joking, and mentioned smelling the scent of mochi and red bean paste at his residence during training, as well as the scent of green tea whenever he appeared. Both Gyu and Sanemi were taken aback by Tanjiro's observations. Gyu turned to Sanemi, surprised by Tanjiro's comment about his favorite food. Tanjiro took advantage of the situation and engaged Sanemi in small talk, asking him if he preferred his ohagi coarse or fine, and stating that he enjoyed his grandmother's recipe. Sanemi's anger grew as Tanjiro continued his questions, but Gyu looked on with curiosity. Unwilling to admit his fondness for Ohagi, Sanemi lost his temper, punching Tanjiro in the face. Tanjiro sat up, rubbing his cheek and looking confused. Jiyu kneeled down beside him, explaining that Sanemi had gotten angry and had stormed off. Tanjiro apologized for interrupting them, but Jiyu assured him it was all right since he was too busy fighting to chat with him, and that Sanemi remained angry with him the whole time. Jiyu mentioned that the hashiras often sparred with other hashiras, and that they were using wooden swords during their training. Tanjiro understood and apologized, feeling sheepish for interrupting. Meanwhile, Tanjiro's Kasugai crow hovered nearby, commenting on the absurdity of their idea to befriend Sanemi with Ohagi. At that moment, Sanemi suddenly appeared at the bottom of the stairs, grumbling about the absence of both Obanai and Muichiro. He complained that if he only trained with the lesser-skilled demon slayers, he would only become rusty. As he thought about Tanjiro's earlier comments, Sanemi's annoyance escalated. He grumbled about Tanjiro's behavior before stopping in his tracks to notice something moving behind him. He reached out and grabbed hold of a demonic marked eye that was twitching and moving around, and then watched as it burned to ash, leaving only a burn mark in his palm. He then realized that the core had been infiltrated and that demons had managed to sneak past the wisteria barriers surrounding the base. The scene shifted to the Ubuyashiki mansion, where Amane carefully held Kagaya's weak and frail arm. She looked up and stared out of the door, sensing something in the distance. Muzan walked along a path towards the gate of the complex. Sharply dressed and shrouded in smoke, he strut arrogantly across the yard and approached the entrance of the Ubuyashiki home. Kagaya, despite his bandaged eyes, could sense Muzan's arrival and turned his head towards the outside, listening intently. Muzan stood at the front of the Ubuyashiki mansion, facing the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps.